The Hardest Day was the name of a Second World War air battle fought during the Battle of Britain on the 18th of August 1940. The Allies had suffered huge setbacks in the initial phases of the Second World War. Poland had fallen, Norway and Denmark had fallen. Finally, after intense fighting, France had fallen, leaving Britain to stand alone in Europe against the might of the German war machine. The British once again relied upon their strong navy and natural moat of the English Channel. German High Command knew that the only way that an invasion of the British Isles could take place was if the Luftwaffe controlled the skies. On the 10th of June 1940, Germany launched an air operation with the intent of crippling the Royal Air Force's ability to respond to an attack, thereby hoping the British would come to peace terms with Germany. On the 18th of August 1940, the Luftwaffe made an all-out effort to severely damage fighter command. The air battles that took place on this day were amongst the largest aerial engagements in history at that time. Both sides suffered very heavy losses. The British outperformed the Luftwaffe in the air, achieving a favourable ratio of 2-1. However, a number of RAF aircraft were caught and destroyed on the ground, ending up balancing losses on both sides. Further large aerial battles would take place, with heavy casualties being suffered, but both sides lost more aircraft combined on this day than at any other point during the campaign, including the Battle of Britain Day, generally considered to be the climax of the campaign. For this reason, the air battle that took place on the 18th of August 1940 became known as the Hardest Day. Over the day, the Luftwaffe tried its utmost to destroy British airfields, flying 850 sorties involving 2,200 aircrew. The RAF combated the threat by flying 927 sorties involving 600 aircrew. At 12:45 in the afternoon, plotters at the radar station near Dover began picking up signs of a large concentration of aircraft in the Calais area of France. RAF squadrons, already in the air, patrolling, were ordered to high alert, while several other squadrons were scrambled and sent to reinforce those already in the air. As the Luftwaffe force crossed the Channel and headed into the airspace above southern England, it was engaged by little resistance. Most RAF squadrons that engaged the large group were forced to withdraw. The observer corps on the ground, counting the German aircraft overhead, realised this was a large-scale, coordinated attack. They also realised the group was heading for Kenley Airfield. The bomber section of the group reached the airfield without incident, only to be met by a hail of anti-aircraft fire when diving low and closing. Scrambled British fighters also dived in on the bombers, downing a few before withdrawing from the melee, in danger of being hit by friendly fire. The now circling fighters ended up picking off the bombers one by one as they emerged from bombing and strafing runs of the airfield. For their efforts, the bombers destroyed at least 3 hangars, hit several other buildings, and destroyed 8 Hurricanes on the ground. It would have been worse had the bombs been released higher. A lot of the bombs landed horizontally and did not explode on impact. The low-level raid put the airfield out of commission for 2 hours. In combat, 2 Hurricanes were shot down by the Dornier's return fire. The bombers lost 4 Do-17s, 3 slightly damaged and 2 seriously damaged. A second attack, headed towards RAF Biggin Hill, had a clear run on its target. The RAF moved 6 squadrons in to defend the airport. They were confronted with a large number of Bf-109s escorting the HE-111s. The British fighters found the German defence of the bombers almost insurmountable, unable to break through and cause damage. Most of the personnel at Biggin Hill had time to take cover before the bombers arrived. While the bombers had an almost clear run at their target, they failed to damage the airfield significantly. Thus far the German fighters had performed well, but now it came to the most difficult part of the operation, withdrawing under attack. The German fighters were low on fuel and could only do so much to protect the bombers. Damaged stragglers lagged behind the main bomber streams and were easy prey for the RAF fighters if they could be found. 23 Spitfires and 36 Hurricanes were moving in to meet the main formations during the withdrawal. Thickening haze worried British flight controllers that the withdrawing German units might disappear before they had a chance of retaliation. RAF squadrons scoured the skies, searching for bombers, eventually coming upon a squadron of Bf-110s. Scattered skirmishes took place late into the night as RAF fighters pursued the German fighters and bombers. The RAF and Fleet Air Arm, the Naval Air Force, lost a total of 68 aircraft, 31 in air combat. 69 German aircraft were destroyed or damaged beyond repair. What follows is a speech by Prime Minister Winston Churchill given to the House of Commons on the 20th of August, 2 days later.
The great air battle, which has been in progress over this island for the last few weeks, has recently attained a high intensity. It is too soon to attempt to assign limits either to its scale or to its duration. We must certainly expect that greater efforts will be made by the enemy than any he has put forth. Hostile airfields are still being developed in France and the Low Countries, and the movement of squadrons and material for attacking us is still proceeding. It is quite plain, sir, that Herr Hitler could not admit defeat in his air attack on Great Britain without sustaining most serious injury. If, after all his boastings and blood-curdling threats and lurid accounts trumpeted round the world of the damage he has inflicted, of the vast numbers of our air force he has shot down, so he says, with so little loss to himself, if after tales of the panic-stricken British crushed in their holes, cursing the plutocratic parliament which has led them to such a plight, if after all this his whole air onslaught were forced, after a while, tamely to peter out, the Führer's reputation for veracity of statement might be seriously impugned. We may be sure, therefore, that he will continue, as long as he has the strength to do so, and as long as any preoccupations he may have in respect of the Russian Air Force allow him to do so. On the other hand, the conditions and course of the fighting have so far been favorable to us. I told the House 2 months ago that whereas in France our fighter aircraft were wont to inflict a loss of 2 or 3 to 1 upon the Germans, and in the fighting at Dunkirk, which was a kind of no man's land, a loss of about 3 or 4 to 1, we expected that in an attack on this island we should achieve a larger ratio. This has certainly come true. It must also be remembered that all the enemy machines and pilots which are shot down over our island or over the seas which surround it are either destroyed or captured, whereas a considerable proportion of our machines and also of our pilots are saved and soon again, in many cases, come into action. The gratitude of every home in our island, in our empire, and indeed throughout the world, except in the abodes of the guilty, goes out to the British airmen who, undaunted by odds, unwearied in their constant challenge and mortal danger, are turning the tide of the world war by their prowess and by their devotion. Never in the field of human conflict was so much owed by so many to so few.